The way University Park Airport and my job specifically has changed since 9/11 is obviously we have a new federal agency that oversees security, that being the Transportation Security Administration, and that obviously introduces another regulatory agency to oversee security. So we have TSA personnel over at our airline terminal screening passengers and baggage, which is something we didn't have before 9/11. And we also have, in terms of airport operations on special events, for instance, Penn State home football games, we have temporary flight restriction around Beaver Stadium, as do all major sporting events across the country. So we have, and we also have detailed plans on how we deal with airport security, and those get updated fairly regularly. And we spend a few dollars on infrastructure improvements with access control and closed circuit television, all of which we did not have prior to 9/11. On September 11th, I vividly remember what I was doing. At that time, I was the assistant manager here at University Park Airport, and my responsibilities at that time were pretty much managing capital improvements and working with engineers and planners on development of the University Park Airport. And that particular day, I was on the phone with one of our engineering firms and speaking to that gentleman about a project. And he had relayed to me over the phone, did I see the news or watch the news about, he had just heard that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. And we talked about it for a little bit, and it seemed odd, and given that it was such a nice day weather-wise, and we just kind of brushed it off as maybe one of those very unfortunate things with a small general aviation aircraft. Something had happened, and maybe with a pilot or an engine issue, and they flew into the World Trade Center. And then when the second one happened, obviously we all knew it was something much more than that. So I think that is going to be one of those days that I will always remember what I was doing at that time, as well as I'm sure everybody else does as well.
The morning of 9/11, I was actually a college student in my sophomore year at Penn State. I was in physics class with some of my friends. We were in lecture, the lecture let out. We at first had no idea what was going on other than a plane had crashed into one of the World Trade Center buildings. We went upstairs to our physics lab, tried to get onto several websites to pull up what was going on, and then we saw the second plane hit Tower 2, and that's when we knew, I think it started to set in, that this was not some sort of random accident. This was something much more sinister going on. And I think that's when we knew that something was going. And then we heard obviously about Shanksville and then the Pentagon shortly thereafter. There was a lot of confusion. I think there was a lot of fear on campus at the time. I remember that our instructor actually would not let us out of the class after it happened, but then shortly thereafter, the rest of the classes that day were canceled on campus, and we just went back to our dorms and watched the coverage of it. Got in touch with family members back home. I'm from New Jersey, so kind of a little bit closer to the incident itself. And once I found out that my family and everything was okay, I was kind of at a little bit more peace of mind. But still, there was a lot of fear that day on the campus. I remember that very clearly. At the time, I was also working as a student auxiliary officer on campus. And I remember from that point on, the security, especially for all the rest of the football games that season, got substantially more ramped up, before the games, with checking of bags and everything like that.
Basically on September 11th, my partner and I were working with the local police. We were doing some training out at Scotia Range. I got a phone call from our executive director saying that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. We didn't think much of that other than it was an accident, and then all of a sudden he called me back and said 2 more planes have crashed, and one has crashed down in Shanksville. So we all left our training and come back to the station and started preparing for the worst.